Before we start our discussion for today, let me introduce myself first. I'm Mergen Emrario, your presenter for today. Our topic for today is about Annotation of Antonio Morga's Sucedos de las Islas, Filipinas. Introduction. History means the study of the events in the past. It is true history where one may be oriented with his or her roots that lead to his or her full understanding of the present. Dr. Jose Rizal, which has an unflattering love in his humble beginning as a Filipino, continuously dig deeper into the Philippine history after studying previous writings which has started in the late 16th century by a Leonitan governor of the Philippines named Dr. Antonio de Morga. Although Rizal's admiration of Morga's work was evidently understood through his detailed study of Latter's narration of the Philippine situation in the past, Rizal found misconceptions in great amount of feats about his native land and the Filipinos. In his sojourn to European countries, particularly in London in 1890, Rizal finally received one great achievement when he successfully finished his annotation of Morga's book Sucedos de las Islas Filipinas, Historical Events of the Philippine Islands, and published his annotated edition. In this chapter, you will be reoriented with some factual information about the Philippine history vis-a-vis Rizal's way when he made changes to the first Philippine historical accounts written in a Spaniard's perspective. Rizal's Philippine history and historiography. Dr. Jose Rizal's unceasing pride of his being a Filipino made him a true historian who dedicated much of his time in the study of the Philippine history, even as other missions while living in a frugality in an English city, London, given the permission to stay frequently in a British. Next is Rizal's Philippine history and historiography. It was during his arduous study of the pre-Hispanic Philippines where he realized his true Filipino identity when he also nourished his mind with intellectual works of Filipinos who wrote substantial historical events of the Philippines before and during foreign colonization. He further realized the need to rewrite the Philippine history based on the standpoint of the Filipinos rather than that of the colonial perspective where biases can be obviously hinted. In an article written by Ikfata in 1968 in Wiley Online Library, Rizal's historical works aim to develop the Philippine national consciousness about their own identity free from colonial ideologies. With the commentaries made by Rizal on Morga's work and with the publication of his annotated edition, he earned himself the label of being a historian. He in fact made a lot of historical writings which made him excellent in following basic principles on how to write a history. He read and studied a lot the works of Filipino historians and honestly giving due credit to them. As cited by Zaid Anzalde, 2007, Rizal told Isabella de los Reyes that a historian ought to be rigorously imparted. I never assert anything on my own authority. I cite texts, and when I do, I have them before me. The next one is Introduction and last chapter of Rizal's annotation of Morga's Sucedos de las Islas Filipinas. Rizal started his work with a prologue from his personal friend, Ferdinand Blumentritt, who gave some suggestion in correcting some points. First, the historian should not impute to the men of the 16th century the broad horizon of ideas that moves the 19th century. Second, the second point which I do not agree is some vented against Catholicism. I believe that you cannot find the origin of numerous events regrettable for Spain and for the good name of the European race and religion by in the hard behavior and abuses of many first. To the Filipinos, in my Noli Me Tangere, I commenced to sketch the present conditions obtaining in our country. The effect produced by my efforts gave me to understand before proceeding to develop before your eyes other successive scenes. That is necessary to first lay bare the past, in order the better to judge the present and to survey the road trodden during 3 centuries. Like almost all of you, I was born and brought up in ignorance of our country's past, and so, without knowledge or authority to speak of what in neither saw nor have studied. I deem it necessary to quote the testimony of an illustrious Spaniards who in the beginning of the new era controlled the destinies of the Philippines and had personal knowledge of our ancient nationality in its last days. It is then the shade of our ancestors' civilization which the author will call before you. If the work serves to awaken you in consciousness of our past and to blot from your memory or to recertify who has been falsified or is calumniated, then I shall not have labored in vain. With this preparation, slight thought, though it may we can all pass to the study of the future. In his work, Rizal wanted to correct the misconceptions found in Morga's book, which to him were more on the colonizer side. He emphasized the Filipinos were already civilized before the coming of the Spaniards, which was contrary to the observation of Morga, where he wrote that the Philippines was once an uncivilized and uninhabited island. In addition, Rizal asserted the existence of government, laws, arts, literature, religion, kind of lifestyle, and good commercial or trade relationship with the neighboring Asian countries prior to the Spanish colonization. He also oftenly accentuated the prolonged misery and demoralization suffered by the Filipinos under the Spanish conquest, which was far from what Morga described as improving conditions of the Philippine inhabitants. Rizal concluded that under the Spanish conquest, the Philippines was depopulated, impoverished, and retorted, astounded by metaphor with no confidence in their past, still without faith. Impoverished and retorted, astounded by metaphor with no confidence in their past, still without faith in her present and without faltering hope in the future. He finally foretold that someday the Philippines will seek ways to become free and independent if the Spanish colonizers will continue to exploit the Filipinos with rights and fair treatments, still allowed them to live happy and in peace. Next is Rizal's ideas on how to rewrite the Philippine history. On May 20, 2019, the Philippine Embassy in London marks the launch of Centro Rizal London with an exhibition on Filipino reformist Jose Rizal's 10-month visit in London. The exhibit, to retrieve what has been lost, Rizal as a historian, opens to the public from May 27 to June 25, 2019 at the Exhibition Hall of the Chancery. This pioneering exhibition is a collaboration between Centro Rizal London, the National Commission on Culture and the Arts NCCA, and Project Saysay. The exhibition explores Jose Rizal's stay in the English capital to rewrite the history of the Philippines and the Filipino people. After securing permission to work and study at the British Library, Rizal pored over Antonio de Morga's Sucedos de las Islas Filipinos, events in the Philippine Islands which he had first heard of when he was still in the Philippines. Rizal studied and copied de Morga's book verbatim. He also annotated extensive passage of the book to correct de Morga's misconceptions about the Philippines and the Filipinos. Apart from de Morga's book, Rizal also studied and read other books in the British Library on the Philippines. It was during the course of his undertaking that Rizal began to conceive the idea of a truly national Filipino identity. Through this exhibition, we hope to inspire second-generation Filipino Britons and Filipino-Irish to reconnect with their Filipino roots and to rediscover their Filipino heritage, said Ambassador Antonio M. Lagdameo. Research on the development of the exhibition panels was undertaken by Project Saysay, a Philippine-based volunteer-led organization that aims to spread the ideals and values of great Filipinos. Last year, Project Saysay, together with Ibarra Watches, distributed posters bearing the words of Filipino heroes to all Centros Rizal around the world. Next is comparison and contrast of Rizal and Morga's different views about Filipinos and Philippine culture. Rizal's view, this fish that Morga mentions that cannot be good until it begins to rot, is bagoongs, and fermented fish or shrimp paste used as a sauce in Filipino cuisine, and those who have eaten it and tasted it know that it neither is nor should be rotten. While Morga's view, their daily fare is composed of lice crushed in wooden pillars and when cooked as called morisquita. This is the staple throughout the land, cooked fish which they have in a ban, and pork, venison, mountain buffaloes which they call carabaos, beef and fish which they know is best when it has started to mouth and stink. I'm going to discuss first the Rizal's view. First, Christianity was a weapon for facilitating the political and economic subjugation of the native. Rizal noticed all Morga's mistakes. Morga misspelled many native names of place, flora and fauna and other social classes which Rizal corrected. Third, Rizal emphasized that native women, unlike their European counterparts, never lost their noble titles. It was the groom who gave dowry to the parents because they going to lose their precious daughter. Last, Rizal clarified that Morga must have meant sinamay, which was woven from abaca thread that comes from the banana trunks, not from the leaves. While the Morga's view by the Christian religion, Dr. Morga appears to mean the Roman Catholic which by fire and sword he would preserve in its purity in the Philippines. Nevertheless, in other lands, notably in Flanders, these means were ineffective to keep the church unchanged or to maintain its supremacy or even to hold its subject. In Morga's time, the Philippines exported silk to Japan, whence now comes the best quality of that merchandise. Morgas remarked that the Filipinos like fish better when it is commencing to turn bodies, another of those prejudices which Spaniards like all other nations have. Last, Morga said that cotton was grown extensively in practically all the islands which the natives sold as trade and woven fabrics to Chinese and other foreign merchants.